Well, hey everybody, my name's Kevin Snyder. I'm an accredited speaker in 2022 with Toastmasters International, and today we are so thrilled and honored to be talking with Paul Artale, an accredited speaker from, Paul, 2019, right?
Correct.
And then also Forrest Tuff, who's also an accredited speaker, who he earned that prestigious designation in 2021. Hey, Forrest.
Hey, how's it going, Kevin?
Awesome, awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for your valuable time. I know the folks that are watching this, there's something inside them where they're interested, or maybe they're already committing and they're in the process of applying for the accredited speaker designation. So today, folks, our focus is not on how to apply, eligibility. You've got plenty of resources already at your fingertips for that. So if you're looking for information about that, let me refer you to the Accredited Speaker Program on the Toastmasters International website, and you can see that the website link for that specifically is toastmasters.org/accredited speaker. Okay, so our focus today is really to talk with Paul and Forrest about, hey, what was it like when you applied? Any tips and insights you might give? What motivated you to apply? And again, thank you both for taking some time today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
So, Paul, let's throw you the first question, if you don't mind. Walk us back to when you first applied for the accredited speaker. What motivated you to even pursue the accredited speaker designation?
Well, my interest in applying really had little to do with actually getting the designation and everything to do with focusing myself in my business. So I was at the time working a full-time job. I was trying to finish a PhD, had a young family, and I was speaking, I was getting paid, but it wasn't happening at the frequency or at the rate I wanted. So I needed something to focus me. And I had known of the accredited speaker program for a while. And at the time I was looking at applying, they had sort of just started changing over the rules to include paid engagements. And I just thought this is a great way for me to focus myself. And I figured if I can fill out this application form with all the engagements you got to put down and put down the fees and all that, that was my goal. So I actually, in the early stages of application, that spreadsheet was what drove me to be more focused in my business and go after the opportunities that I wanted. And that's really what it was about. And then getting the accredited speaker was just a byproduct of all the work that it took to get that first application in.
Wow. Loving that. I've heard a lot of accredited speakers, when I was asking for feedback myself, that was very similar to what I heard of common theme, that just simply getting the documentation together, getting the organization together was helpful for their own speaking business further. Right?
Right.
Interesting that you say that, Paul. Thank you for sharing that. Forrest, what about you when you applied, or even before you applied? What motivated you to want to pursue it?
Actually, when I joined Toastmasters, I wanted to be an accredited speaker. I didn't want to be a distinguished Toastmaster. I didn't want to be the world champion. I wanted the professional designation. So when I joined Toastmasters, my eyes were set on that accreditation right off the bat. And I'll be honest with you, I recognized that I needed to find separation in this business, because in anything that you do professionally, you're always looking for that edge, that thing that you can say that you have that the competition doesn't. You want that differentiator. So for me, the accredited speaker was something that I thought would differentiate me as a professional speaker and even as a Toastmaster. So I went head first into it. And within my third year in Toastmasters, that's when I actually became a finalist in 2020. So for me, it was that thing that I was like, I really not only want to be a professional, but I want to be the unicorn. I want to be that unicorn in my area. So it was for me something that I thought could give me an extra edge on the competition as I continued on this professional journey.
Loving it. Wow. So Forrest, let's stay with you for a moment, if you don't mind. When you did apply, any good stories? Anything happen? Any twists or turns, or even things tell us what the application process was like.
Here's the thing. I was a former athlete. I was a former Division I college basketball player. So my mindset is you go after it, you train, you prepare, you achieve. That's how we look at it. Now, we know there's going to be some type of experience or failure, but we don't train to fail. We train to win. So when the opportunity came, I'm a finalist. 2020, the pandemic. We all know how that polarized not only the world, but the speaking industry. So I've done all these talks in person. I've got my jargon together, my movements, my hand movements, my pacing. You have all this together, and now you're told you have to talk to a little bitty camera and everyone there is cheering for you. You don't have the audience interaction. You have none of this. So everything that I trained for was no longer viable. And I had to retrain myself within a month or two to figure out. We learned in May of 2020, and we had to give our talk in June. So not only was I a little bit ill prepared because I wasn't keen on virtual presentations, I also regretted that I wasn't going to Paris. All right, we were supposed to be in Paris in 2020. Now I'm doing it from my living room, talking to a camera.
I'm with you,
So
man.
I would say for me, that was the biggest curveball. But the silver lining in that for me is that I did not want to forego giving that a try. It was a learning experience. And I will say it did help me grow, because even though I did not achieve it in 2020, I was told that, hey, you're not an accredited speaker. It was one of those things where now I had to learn a new skill set. And so that skill set helped me in my professional journey, because now I can get booked virtually. And once I learned that, that was something that I really accredit Toastmasters to not giving up on that opportunity for us and letting us show how we could be professional speakers in an evolving environment.
You could charge us for that if you want. That was some good nuggets, good insights. And Forrest, because you mentioned it, and you and I have got that in common, we both presented, we got through level 1 and presented level 2 at the convention through virtual. Neither one of us earned the designation in 2020.
Yeah.
We met the criteria, but that presentation, for various reasons, so because you mentioned that, what was different then in 2021 when you presented again? And I love the fact you didn't give up. You said, hey, I'm gonna do this again. It's a learning moment for me. I'm gonna use it to my advantage. And you did. What was different maybe a year later?
Well, the feedback helped. The first year, I will say this, under the time constraints, things evolve. And this is one thing that I feel about this business as I continue to grow. Things evolve and you have to be able to adapt. So when we were told in May, hey, listen, you are a finalist, but we need you to present in June or July, I immediately called on a couple of mentors. I called Paul Artale, I called Bob Huey, and I also called Ron Chapman. He was from Atlanta also. And I'm picking their brains, just trying to get insight on how this works. And they were very honest. They were like, listen, here's what we can give you, but this is something new for us also. So with that, I took what I could get from them. I changed my speech a million times. So I knew that I was dealing with lack of preparation to a degree, but I had to go with confidence. I had to be content with what I did. And once I received the feedback, why I didn't, I now understood what I needed to do next year. So I focused on honing that presentation. I didn't have to go back to my fellow accredited speakers that had given me advice. I said, you know what you need to do now. I still remember their advice from last year. It was still the same, but I needed to focus on practicing, because I had to realize also this is a competition. The final piece is a competition. So for those of you who want to become accredited speakers, understand there's the parameters of professional speaking, and then there's the parameters of a competition. Make sure you understand both, because that's going to be how you get judged in order to receive this accreditation. So for me, it was the feedback I received from the judges.
Right. And folks, Forrest, I'm glad you mentioned that again, that there is a rubric to this. It's in the handbook, friends. It's in the handbook. So look at that rubric. It tells you what the judges are, how they're going to score you. Forrest, thank you for sharing some of those amazing insights. So the fact that you got feedback not only from the judges, but you also reached out and got some coaching and mentorship from other accredited speakers.
Exactly.
So folks don't need to do this on their own, right? And in fact, that they're trying to do it on their own, they're probably going to make a mistake.
Yeah. You have help. Use it. It doesn't make you less. That's the point. Having someone help you doesn't make you less. It only enhances what you don't know. So use the opportunities and the people that are here that would like to help you to achieve your dreams.
Right. And you've got folks watching this, you got 3 people here. If you're looking for some feedback and some insights, we can't have 1,000 people reach out to us in one day, but don't do it on your own. Know that you got support. Forrest, real quick, I'm going to have you do this again at the end, but how can folks get a hold of you if they have an interest in asking you for some support?
Well, you can either go to my website, forresttuff.com. That has 2 R's, 2 T's, 2 F's, forresttuff.com. Or you can reach me at info@forresttuff.com. Remember, that's 2 R's, 2 T's, 2 F's. And you can find all my social media sites and contact information there.
I'm sure it's the first time you ever had to say 2 R's, 2 T's. And
2 R's, 2 T's.
Yeah, I know. I'll just so folks know, look above this video wherever you're finding it, or in the description. I'll make sure that I've got Paul and Forrest's contact info for you. So, Paul, let's throw it to you real quick. Anything you want to add on to what Forrest kind of said about maybe just support in general or guidance?
Guidance. Well, I mean, so like Forrest, I was a college athlete. I played football. I was Division Canada, so I played north of the border. So I had that same sort of, but the preparation, the mindset, all that, I had that in.
Right.
I actually had probably a different approach than what both of you articulated in terms of going about. I did look at the parameters. The challenge for me, both levels, right? So you submit your level 1 video and then you have to do your level 2 performance, was always like, what do I do? And I remember early on thinking, this is about what I am as a professional speaker. So I'm not going to construct something special for this, like especially from scratch. I'm not going to alter things dramatically. I'm going to do what I do, so my level 1 video was actually a training seminar I did. And for level 2, I took my number 1 keynote, which talks about my life in college football as a person with a disability, and squishing it to 18 minutes was difficult because what do you leave in? What do you, but I can remember just there was a point where, I was going to different clubs and practicing and all that, and you're getting your feedback, and the feedback is, it's of all different varieties, and you see something, oh, that could work. And like, I was getting too cute with it. And I just remember sitting down one day and saying, like, you've been doing this for 10 years. You know what works, what doesn't. Like, decide on the stuff, work on it, and just go on stage and do your thing and let the chips fall where they fall. And that was very liberating for me, because when I went on stage in 2019, which I don't know, I probably would not have done the virtual, because I don't know if I would have done as well with the accredited speaker if it was a virtual presentation. So hats off to you guys. But for me, I knew that at least when I walk out onto that stage, I know what I'm up against. I'm going to be my purest self. And that's my best advice for anyone, is like, be your purest self out there. You want the designation. Yeah, you want to win the game. For me, I want to do it as me, because when people are watching that video of us as accredited speakers getting that designation, I want the person they see in that video to be who I really am, right? I don't want to be like doing gestures because I'm trying to get a point. That's not who I am. So I think that was it. In terms of help, I remember Joe Grondin gave me some help. Cheryl Rausch gave me help, especially in the early stages of like the application piece. And I had a business coach at the time who would sometimes, could give me input on presentations, and he helped give me just a different perspective on it. And I think that's a key thing, is get someone who has a bit of an outside perspective on what you're doing. And sort of, it kept me grounded. So that was, for me, that's the advice, is be yourself. This whole process, be yourself. Don't try to be some sort of version of what you think a speaker is, or what you think a judge thinks a speaker is. Just be yourself, because that's why you're here. That's what this designation is for. It's to reward you for who you are, right? That's how I looked at it. And for me, it was liberating. I was on stage doing my thing, improvising some sections, and that's what I do. And I had fun with it. It was like it was probably the most fun 18 minutes I've had on stage in my career.
Well, I'll put a link to watch both your videos too, for folks so they can watch those videos. That's something that was extremely helpful for me, was to watch other accredited speakers doing their keynote.
Yep.
And one of the challenges that goes into that is as speakers, even amongst speakers, we tend to, or at least I'll speak for me, I tend to get sometimes wanting to be, if I watch another great speaker, I'm like, ooh, that was so good. I don't know if I could be that good, or how do I be like them? And I'm like, no, that's a trap.
Right.
I can only be me. I can only be my purest self. I mean, Paul, that sounds like a new keynote.
There you go. Your purest self.
If you're
Sponsored by Dove soap. Yeah, and
You have that trademark, be your purest self. You should.
I know.
So I'll add to that though, because you just got me thinking. Like one thing I did, and I don't know what phase in the journey this was. It was probably between level 1 and level 2. Was I purchased like the last 3 years of accredited speaker competition speeches, and I watched them, and I looked at. Remember, my wife and I sat and we kind of scored them. We used the judges forums, so and we scored them and compared who we would have passed and who we wouldn't have passed, and we found that the trend was that, again, those that passed were like themselves, like they were doing their thing on stage. And I think that's, and I would say this is the last thing before I keep rambling, as I keep rambling here, is, but like, I think for those who are thinking about doing this or in the midst of it, and I know sometimes there's a trend to like trying to be inspirational, motivational, which is ironic because that's really what I am. But I always like watch Michael Bayer's from 2019, watch his speech. You know, he talks about like running lean healthcare organizations. Like if you are a speaker, you don't have to be a motivational speaker. You can do a business seminar and get this designation. And so whenever people are like, I don't have an inspirational story, I'm like, watch Michael Bayer's video and then come back to me, because it's not that. But that's what he does, and he does well for a living. And so I think it's also to consider other avenues of getting this designation. It doesn't just have to be the motivational speaker.
And you might
really
add
good
a point to that real quick.
Add on, Forrest. Yeah.
One thing that I think that was so important, what Paul said, is that your message has to be authentic, but also remember, in this aspect of the competition, you're speaking to an international audience. So
Yes.
you have to imagine, if you use something that is only in a community, it may not resonate with people in other countries.
Right.
So try to find your message and hone that message so that it could speak to people in general.
Right.
And one of the things I'll say, my first year, I spoke about the film industry, which isn't my only expertise. My expertise is really in branding.
Mhm.
So I spoke more to branding and business. And I think that overall message resonated better than the niche of maybe film, which may have isolated some people. So that's something to think about also when you put your message together. Think about, hey, I'm talking to someone that may be from India, or if I'm talking to someone that's maybe in Africa, how does this message resonate with them? And be careful of lingo and things of that nature, because that can also be something that could derail you as you're trying to receive this accreditation.
Yeah, I'll jump on. I'll yes and that, because I speak of like my hit hard, my accredited talk is about my life in American football, right? Which is and I can't get rid of that. I'm not gonna take artistic license and be like, I was a tennis player, right? So but I did one thing I did do is go through my text of my speech and look at the words that were definitely more Americanized and might not translate as well. So something as simple as like, you know, they had won 5 straight titles. I think I changed the word to championships. Just really subtle things to not muddy the message. And I thought that, because I had to take the international audience into perspective. And I think that's a fantastic tip for those that are submitting videos and doing their presentations. Consider that you have an international view on you at stage and grading and reacting to you. So I think that's something to take into consideration.
And we're anybody applying is not doing it to come. They're doing it to win per se, for all the right reasons. But you also not only have an international audience, you also have an international group of judges.
Right.
So if they're the folks who respectfully are, following the rubric, then we want to appeal to them. When I did my talk, I went back and forth until the night before about including a segment of being on The Price is Right, which is part of my signature speech. I mean, if I didn't include The Price is Right, then that's not my typical program. So I did what you did, Paul. I said, hey, let me take a segment of my actual keynotes when organizations pay me and make this into an 18-minute talk. I thought Price is Right's got to be in there. But I said, Price is Right is a USA game show, and I'd already looked weeks prior. Well, do other countries have a game show called The Price is Right? Come to find out, it's in over 33 countries. It's the number one, not just game show in America, in the USA, it's also the number one game show in the world. But they call it different things in other countries. So during my talk, if people watch my talk, you'll see there's a segment where I talk about, hey, if you're in Germany, Der Preis des Heiß. Or if you're in, I looked up these different, what it was called, and I referenced it in the program. And in some of the judging feedback that I read afterward, that was one of the things that the judges said, no, that was really clever.
Yeah.
You knew you were talking to an international audience,
Yep.
and it showed.
Yep.
So great tip, Forrest and Paul, that I think a lot of people need to realize, know your audience and
Can
show
I say
it.
this to you, Kevin? I'm really interested for you because you and I both did the virtual experience, and then you came back and did we had a conversation, and I said, yeah, I'm going back in. You said, I'm going to actually go the next year to do it in person. And I really wanted that too, because I love that feedback. I love my presence on stage. What was it like for you going through that virtual experience and then realizing your goals in 2022?
So I'm glad you asked that, because you're right. I deferred it in 2020 when Forrest and I, we got through level 1 and level 2 we did not. We had the choice of deferring it for a year. Right. Well, I deferred it to go in person, because I just felt, being true to myself, yes, I can present virtually, but for me, I looked at this accredited speaker keynote as a one-time shot, kind of like a TEDx talk. And I just made the choice that I was going to wait to do it in person, because that's mostly how I do my keynote. So I was, and Forrest, you and I talked a couple times. I went back and forth on that, but my wife and I'll say she did. We had a baby, or she did. You know what I mean? Yeah. But in 2021, we had a new baby. We also had another one coming on the way. I had a lot going on. Plus, my speaking virtually had really picked up. So for me, I made a conscious choice. Hey, if I'm gonna do this, not only do I want to be in person, but I really need to put the time and energy in to do it right.
That's right.
And that's another reason I deferred it to 2022. And it just happens that it was a hybrid event in Nashville. And I loved everything about Nashville made sense to me too, about being a music city, because I used music in my talk. If people watch mine, I came out to Don't Stop Believing. And then also, just Nashville was as much as I would have loved Paris, it was a drive, and I could take my wife with me. But what it was like in person, you could feel the energy in the room. It was cool. And cool doesn't gravitate to the full emotion, but to see people, especially amongst Toastmasters, with that theme of we are all storytellers. And I shifted my talk to match that theme and used music, and it just felt so aligned and so natural. It felt really, really good. So I am looking back, I'm glad that I waited, but I don't think I would have done it justice in 2021. And I was cheering you on, Forrest. I was like, yeah, I knew you were going to get it. So congrats to you.
Yeah, thanks. And I think that's the important thing. I wanted you to tell that story because for many of the people trying, you have to realize this is a personal journey. You don't have to do it one way because someone else does it. This is a personal, once again, the accredited speaker journey, you can have people help you, but it is a personal journey and you have to do what works for you. And the thing that's great about all three of us here is we're all accredited speakers. So we made great decisions on how we approach the business of professional speaking. And that's what we want to share with Toastmasters. This is a business. What we do is professional speaking, and it's a business. And in business, you have to make strategic and calculated decisions to achieve your goals. So thanks for sharing that, Kevin, because I thought it was really important that people hear your mindset on that.
Well, people would look at all of our talks. Paul, I watched your talk hit hard. You had the whole audience repeating, hit hard, hit. That talk, Forrest, in your talk and my talk, the amount of time that we invested in that, people only see the final result. They only see the 15, the 18, or in my case, the 20 minutes. They don't see all the time that went into it. So it's not just in addition, yes, and to a personal journey, it's a personal commitment and sacrifice. And I think that's what a lot of times people get surprised by when they start pursuing any massive goal or achievement. It's an acknowledgement. If you do earn it or achieve it, it's an acknowledgement of the work you've put in prior.
Right. Right. They don't. They see the 18 minutes, or you got 20, so you're lucky. You got those extra. I would have killed for those 2 minutes. But
well, hey, let me tell you something. I almost failed at that time, and that I got. In fact, maybe I should have, because I got confused with my countdown clock, and huge mistake, huge mistake. That hey, and I make a mistake. I don't have any speech that's perfect anyway. So hey,
and that's the competition piece. See, that's the we're not talking about, because on a that's the business of it also. But in that competition, that time limit is also something that we have to adhere to get it. You do all this work, book all these gigs, and now comes down to a clock also.
It does.
Yeah.
I will say though, and this is the advice I got in terms of the clock specifically, when we were, going through it, was we had 18 minutes, and most of us have gone through a competition or two in Toastmasters, or at least seen one. So in competition, the clock is like, that red light is like the most stressful thing in the world, right? Like, wrap it up or go home, or you have to make a decision to wrap it up and not wrap it up and get DQ'd, but do your message. I remember being told, stay in time. If you go over, it's not an automatic DQ, but wrap it up, right? Like that, which is like when you're on a professional stage, sometimes you run short, sometimes you're running long. You have to make that decision of like, am I going to go a minute over? Am I going to cut? And I, for me, that was liberating, in the sense of like, I'm not going to go for, 42 minutes and expect to get in. But when I was getting at 17 something, I was kind of in my down cycle. I think I clocked in like 18 and 30 seconds, but you have that. But again, what I like about the program and this type of competition, if we're going to dub it that, are two things. I think number one, it really is like, it's a natural, it really, for me as a professional speaker, I felt like I was just doing an 18-minute presentation. Like I was doing what I do for 18 minutes, and I make decisions like I would any other time, which when you're in a speech competition, that is not the case, right? Like you typically don't. And the second thing I like, and I think we've all sort of alluded to it, is it's a competition against self, but you're rooting for everyone, right? Like you're watching. I mean, there was like 8 of us the year I went. Like you wanted everyone to succeed. You wanted, there wasn't like this, oh, Forrest is up. Like, I hope he goes long so I have a better shot at it. Like it's, hey, cool. Like who's in the club this year? Because we're all at that point where we should be doing it. And so I think that's kind of a cool. It's a different dynamic to the accredited speaker versus like a competition.
You're right.
And for folks watching this, if this is the first video you've watched, I've also interviewed the co-chairs of the Accredited Speaker program. Let me put that slide back up one more time, just so you see it. Okay, Rochelle and Greg, they actually talk about that and talk about the difference between the Accredited Speaker program, respectfully, as it relates to the World Championship. The World Championship, there is only one winner. Then there's a second place and a third place, respectfully. So accredited speakers, let's say there's 6 presenting, all 6 can earn it.
Right.
So it's more of a competition amongst yourself.
Right.
To have you put the time in, do you have the speech ready? Right. And that's something that's really important for people to know, the distinction between that, if that makes sense. So I know for me too, if people watch, again, I'll have links to all of our videos. People I know are going to be like, hey, wait a minute. My introduction literally was, because I did a little prep of the program itself, but because it had been 3 years, when I didn't know that I was the only accredited speaker presenting until I got there. I was shocked. I was humbled. So that actually put, I would say, a little extra pressure on me, because and also the people showing up, they didn't know that.
Right.
They didn't know that. They expected probably several presentations. So in the introduction, when they mentioned that I was the only one, you could hear like air get, and I thought, okay, no extra pressure here. And then in my program, I think people were just so excited to be together again.
Right.
They were extra nice and special to me. But in my talk, I got 3, maybe 4 standing ovations. And I mean, we're Toastmasters, so we support each other. But I think that was another reason where I got a little leeway on the timing, is because my speech, I mean, they saw that. And but my number one advice to folks is not only just know how to know the guidelines, know the handbook, but is you got to know when you're presenting. Don't put a judge in a position where they say, he talked for 4 extra minutes. Come on. Because at a professional speech, when somebody gets up and you're not done talking yet, and there's a conference agenda after you, if you're still talking, you won't be referred. they will never hire you again. And that's the essence of accredited speaker as well. We're professional speakers. Cardinal rule, know your audience. Second rule, end on time.
That's right.
So speaking of ending on time, Forrest, Paul, thank you all so much. Really appreciate you taking some energy to share insights about your experience with accredited speaker. Again, Forrest, how can folks get a hold of you? And Paul, same thing with you. Forrest?
ForrestTuff.com, 2 R's, 2 T's, 2 F's, and you can find me everywhere from there.
Paul, what about you?
Same thing. PaulArtale.com. Just find me there, find me, and then connect with me on LinkedIn. Probably the 2 best ways to get a hold of me.
We're professionals. We should be easy to be found. Just type up our name, spell it right. So folks, look, one last time, go to accredited speaker. Just type it up on the Toastmasters.org. So much information there that's really easy to find to learn more. And thank you all for spending some time with us today. We'll hope to see you on that stage at the next big convention. Take care, y'all.